Welcome back to another episode of Out Loud Geek, where we discuss news and views about pop culture, science fiction, fantasy, food, cooking, the outdoors, and more. Two new low-budget movies made it into the top 5 movies for this weekend's domestic box office that ended on August 25th, 2024. And one movie retook the number 1 position, Deadpool and Wolverine, after sliding to number 2 when Alien Romulus opened last week. So the two movies switched places this weekend. And the cumulative total earnings for this weekend's top 5 movies at the domestic box office was around $60.3 million, which was around a 47.9% decline from last weekend's similar cumulative total of $115.6 million, making it the first time since the weekend of June 9th that a cumulative total has been under $100 million, which obviously isn't good for theaters. But before proceeding, I'd like to ask everyone to please like this video, please leave a comment, please subscribe to support this channel, and please press the bell to receive notifications. Thanks! And as of this weekend, the 3 highest grossing movies, both domestically and worldwide, for 2024 remained Disney Pixar's animated movie Inside Out 2, Disney and Marvel Studios' MCU movie Deadpool and Wolverine, and Illumination Entertainment's animated sequel Despicable Me 4. Domestically, Inside Out 2 earned another $2.1 million this weekend and $1.7 million during the week to bring its current domestic box office total up to $646.3 million, keeping it as the only movie so far this year to have broken $600 million domestically. Internationally, the movie earned another $18.9 million to bring its current international box office total up to $1,002.7 million. So globally, Inside Out 2 earned another $22.7 million to bring its current global gross box office total up to $1,649 million, which makes it the first and only movie so far this year to break $1.6 billion worldwide. It also remains the first movie to have broken $1 billion worldwide in 2024, but it's not the only movie to have done so. Further, Inside Out 2 has now earned $203.4 million more than last year's highest grossing movie, Barbie, which earned $1,445.6 million. In terms of estimated break-even points, Inside Out 2 has a reported production budget of $200 million, which, when multiplied by 2.5 and 3.0 respectively, to account for the 50% of gross box office ticket sales that movie theaters keep for themselves, as well as the additional costs of marketing the movie and other miscellaneous costs that the studio pays above and beyond the production budget, yields an estimated break-even point range of $500 million to $600 million. Thus, Inside Out 2 has most definitely made bank. Domestically, Deadpool and Wolverine earned another $18.3 million during the weekend and $12.1 million during the week to bring its current domestic box office total up to $577.2 million, which keeps it as the second highest grossing movie domestically so far this year, and only the second movie to have broken $500 million domestically. And the movie will probably break $600 million domestically in around 2 to 3 weeks. Deadpool and Wolverine is also the highest grossing R-rated movie domestically of all time by having surpassed the domestic box office earnings of 2004's The Passion of the Christ during the weekend of August 11th. Internationally, the movie earned another $37.3 million to bring its current international box office total up to $634.1 million. So globally, the movie earned another $67.7 million to bring its current global gross box office total up to $1,211.3 million, keeping it as only the second movie so far this year to break $1 billion globally. Deadpool and Wolverine is also the highest grossing R-rated movie worldwide of all time by having outperformed the global earnings of 2019's R-rated movie entitled Joker during the weekend of August 18th. In terms of the MCU, Deadpool and Wolverine is Marvel Studios' first movie since 2021's Spider-Man No Way Home to break $1 billion at the global box office, and it's now the 8th highest grossing MCU movie worldwide of all time by having surpassed the global box office earnings of 2016's Captain America: Civil War. And with its reported production budget of $250 million, when multiplied by 2.5 and 3.0, that yields an estimated break-even point range of $625 million to $750 million. Clearly, Deadpool and Wolverine has already made bank. Domestically, Despicable Me 4 earned another $4.4 million to bring its current domestic box office total up to $348.3 million. Internationally, the movie earned another $30.1 million to bring its current international box office total up to $537.1 million. So globally, the movie earned another $38 million to bring its current global gross box office total up to $885.4 million, keeping it as only the third movie so far this year to break $800 million globally. And for Despicable Me 4, with its reported production budget of $100 million, when multiplied by 2.5 and 3.0, that yields an estimated break-even point range of $250 million to $300 million respectively. Thus, Despicable Me 4 has already made bank. So this weekend's top 5 movies at the domestic box office included the following. Deadpool and Wolverine rose to number 1. Scott Free Productions and Brandywine's movie entitled Alien Romulus fell to number 2. Wayfarer Studios and Sony Pictures' romantic drama It Ends With Us clung to number 3. Amazon MGM Studios and several other studios' low-budget suspense thriller entitled Blink Twice opened at number 4. And Sony Studios and 2 other studios' very low-budget drama entitled The Forge opened at number 5. Since I have already talked about the box office earnings for Deadpool and Wolverine, we'll move on to Alien Romulus. Domestically, the movie earned another $16.2 million to bring its current domestic box office total up to $72.6 million. Internationally, the movie earned another $86.1 million, which is 29% more than what it earned internationally last weekend, to bring its current international box office total up to $152.8 million. So globally, the movie earned another $116.7 million, which is 7.4% more than what the movie earned globally last weekend, to bring its current global gross box office total up to $225.4 million. Domestically, It Ends With Us earned another $11.9 million to bring its current domestic box office total up to $120.8 million. Internationally, the movie earned another $39.6 million to bring its current international box office total up to $121.8 million. So globally, the movie earned another $62.6 million to bring its current global gross box office total up to $242.6 million. And given the movie's very low production budget of only $25 million, which would give the movie a mid-range estimated break-even point of around $62.5 million, the movie has already made bank. The movie entitled Blink Twice opened by earning $7.3 million domestically and $6.7 million internationally for a global gross opening weekend box office total of $14 million. The movie entitled The Forge opened by earning $6.6 million domestically, which is also its current global gross box office total since the movie doesn't open overseas until next weekend. I'm also continuing to track several other movies that are no longer in the top 5, which includes the following. In its 6th weekend in theaters, Universal Pictures, Warner Bros., and Amblin Entertainment sequel Twisters finally fell out of the top 5 movies to be number 6. In its 8th weekend at the box office, Despicable Me 4 fell to number 9. In its 11th weekend at the box office, Inside Out 2 fell to number 10. And in only its 3rd weekend at the box office, Lionsgate Films' video game-based flop, Borderlands, fell to number 14. Domestically, Twisters earned another $6.2 million to bring its current domestic box office total up to $248.7 million. Internationally, the movie earned another $3.7 million to bring its current international box office total up to $98.7 million. So globally, the movie earned another $13.7 million to bring its current global gross box office total up to $347.4 million. Since I already talked about the box office earnings for Despicable Me 4 and Inside Out 2, we'll skip those and go to Borderlands. Domestically, Borderlands earned another $485,000 to bring its current domestic box office total up to $15.2 million. As of this week, internationally, there are new box office earnings of $1.4 million to bring the movie's current international box office total up to $9.1 million. So globally, the movie earned another $2.9 million to bring its current global gross box office total up to $24.2 million. And there is one more movie that I will mention in this video. And that movie is entitled The Crow, which was produced by 9 separate studios, but it only opened domestically this weekend in the number 8 position. Domestically, the movie opened with $4.6 million, but no international box office has yet been reported. And with its $50 million production budget, yeah, it is a complete flop, and that's really all that I need to say about this movie at the present time. Now, to know whether these movies are going to break even or not, as well as how much money they might be losing, we need to look at their production budgets, which we can then multiply by 2.5 for a single mid-range estimated break-even point, or by both 2.5 and 3.0 for a broader estimated break-even point range. But if there's a reported value for the movie's marketing and distribution budget, we can add that to the movie's production budget for a total cost, and then multiply the sum by 2 to yield a more accurate estimated break-even point. For Alien Romulus, with its reported moderate production budget of $80 million, that yields an estimated break-even point range of $200 million to $240 million. For Twisters, with its reported production budget of $200 million, that yields an estimated break-even point range of $500 million to $600 million. For Borderlands, with its reported production budget of $115 million and its reported marketing and distribution budget of $30 million, that gives us a total cost of $145 million, which when multiplied by 2 yields an estimated break-even point of $290 million. In this video, I am no longer projecting what the final domestic or global gross box office earnings might be for the movie Borderlands, because its expected future earnings are either currently too small, possibly non-existent, or going unreported. So for Borderlands, with its current global gross box office earnings of $24.2 million and its estimated break-even point of $290 million, the movie currently stands to lose somewhere on the order of $265.8 million in global gross box office revenue. Then by dividing the global gross box office revenue losses by 2 to account for the 50% of gross box office ticket sales that movie theaters keep for themselves, the affected studios currently stand to lose the following. For Borderlands, Lionsgate Films currently stands to lose around $132.9 million. And that now brings us to the movies whose final domestic and global gross box office revenues I am currently projecting, which includes Deadpool and Wolverine, Alien Romulus, Twisters, Despicable Me 4, and Inside Out 2. For Deadpool and Wolverine, to project what the movie's final domestic box office earnings might be, I'll use a range of average weekly drops that are derived from the previous 33 MCU movies, whose overall franchise average weekly drop is 38.19%, with a standard deviation of 6.45%. And one standard deviation above and below the MCU's franchise average weekly drop gives me a range of 31.74% to 44.65%. And using that range, I can project that the final domestic box office for the movie may range from $614.9 million at the low end, $626.3 million at the mid-range, and $642.1 million at the upper end, which is a lower range than last week's projection. And by using the movie's current domestic share of 47.65%, which is nearly the same as last week's, I can project that the final global gross box office earnings for the movie may range from $1,290.3 million at the low end, $1,314.3 million at the mid-range, and $1,347.5 million at the upper end, which is also lower than last week's projection. So while it's very unlikely that Deadpool and Wolverine will be able to outperform Inside Out 2, it does have the potential for becoming the MCU's 7th highest grossing movie worldwide of all time. For Alien Romulus, given that it's the 9th movie within the Alien franchise, to project what its final domestic box office might be, I'll use a range of possible average weekly drops that are based on the earnings of the previous 6 films instead of all 8, because the first 2 movies, 1979's Alien and 1986's Aliens, were released when there weren't as many movie theaters as there are today, causing their individual average weekly drops to be heavily skewed downwards as compared with the more recent 6 previous movies. Thus, from the 6 previous movies, I get a limited franchise average weekly drop of 39.57%, with a standard deviation of 9.2%, which allows me to create a possible range of average weekly drops that are 1 standard deviation above and below that limited franchise average. And that range is 30.37% to 48.77%. So using that range, I can project that the final domestic box office earnings for Alien Romulus may range from $104.8 million at the low end, $119.4 million at the mid-range, and $142.7 million at the upper end, which is higher than last week's projection. And using the movie's current domestic share of 32.22%, which is lower than last week's and well within 1 standard deviation of the entire franchise's average domestic share of 35.85%, I can project that the movie's final global gross box office earnings may range from $325.3 million at the low end, $370.6 million at the mid-range, and $442.7 million at the upper end. So thanks to the boost in international box office earnings this weekend, as I reported earlier in the video, Alien Romulus is now on its way to making bank. For Twisters, assuming a range of possible average weekly drops from 30 to 40%, I can project that the final domestic box office for the movie may range from $263.7 million at the low end, $267.2 million at the mid-range, and $271.8 million at the upper end, which is a more narrow range than last week's projection. And by using the movie's current domestic share of 71.59%, which is nearly the same as last week's, I can project that the final global gross box office earnings for the movie may range from $368.3 million at the low end, $373.2 million at the mid-range, and $379.6 million at the upper end, which is also a more narrow range than last week's projection. But unfortunately for the movie, that entire projected range still falls short of its estimated break-even point range of $500 million to $600 million. So the movie is a flop and currently stands to lose somewhere on the order of $120.4 million to $231.7 million in global gross box office revenue, which, when divided by 2 to account for the 50% of gross box office ticket sales that movie theaters keep for themselves, means that Universal Pictures, Warner Brothers, and Amblin Entertainment currently stand to lose around $60.2 million to $115.8 million. Now, as for the movie Despicable Me 4, given that it's actually the 6th movie in a franchise that began in 2010, I can use box office data from the franchise's previous 5 movies to calculate a franchise average weekly drop of only 27.18%, which is very good. And using the related standard deviation of 4.94%, I can create a statistically defined range of possible average weekly drops for Despicable Me 4 that's 1 standard deviation above and below the franchise average, which gives me a range from 22.24% to 32.13%. And using that range, I can project that the final domestic box office earnings for the movie may range from $364.6 million at the low end, $368.5 million at the mid-range, and $373.6 million at the upper end, which is a more narrow range than last week's projection. And by using the movie's current domestic share of 39.34%, which is lower than last week's, I can project that the final global gross box office earnings for the movie may range from $926.8 million at the low end, $936.8 million at the mid-range, and $949.8 million at the upper end, which is higher than last week's projection. So Despicable Me 4 is currently destined to remain the 3rd highest grossing movie both domestically and worldwide, behind Inside Out 2 and Deadpool and Wolverine. And finally, for Inside Out 2, assuming a range of possible average weekly drops from 30 to 40%, I can project that the final domestic box office earnings for the movie may range from $651.9 million at the low end, $653.1 million at the mid-range, and $654.5 million at the upper end, which is more narrow than last week's projection. Then by using the movie's current domestic share of 39.19%, which is slightly lower than last week's, I can project that the movie's final global gross box office earnings may range from $1,663.3 million at the low end, $1,666.3 million at the mid-range, and $1,670 million at the upper end, which is slightly higher than last week's projection. Thus, The Crow joins Borderlands and Twisters as definite flops. But Alien Romulus, Deadpool and Wolverine, Inside Out 2, Despicable Me 4, and It Ends With Us have all made bank. Thanks for watching today, and a huge thanks to everyone who has subscribed to our channel. We appreciate your support. If you enjoyed this video, please press the like button, and please feel free to share a comment. If you'd like to help support this channel, please press the red subscribe button, and please press the bell to receive notifications for new content. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and Twitter by clicking on the links in the description. Until next time, this is Out Loud Geek.